Hello, girlies. Welcome back to the Pretty in Pink podcast. Oh, hello there, you guys, and welcome back to the best podcast of Pretty in Pink podcast. Today, we have ourselves the talented, the educated, the scholarly Bianca Chin. Clap it up. Clap it up. So, Bianca created a fan fiction short story stuff. I Know Why Because Bird Sings by Maya Angelou.
Yes, I did.
Okay, Bianca, do you want to provide a quick description of the story?
Sure do, Thomas. So the story starts with both Maya and Bailey Jr. They live with their father, Big Bailey, in New York City. This is based on the 2000s versus the 1950s. And they have a deadbeat mother named Vivian. One day while they're in New York, Vivian sends a letter over to Big Bailey to have them come down to Alabama and spend some time with her. Big Bailey is all for the idea, and despite Maya's protest, they packed up their bags and went down to Alabama. Maya and Bailey Jr. already smelled something fishy going down to Alabama. Vivian had a very fake persona going on that did not sit well with them. As they got to the farm and settled in, Vivian explained the rules of what's going on in their space. And essentially, Bailey Jr. and Maya basically had to earn their keep by taking care of the farm. Plot twist, they're also given a letter of Big Bailey saying they will not answer Maya and Bailey Jr.'s calls, and that he will be out of town and he will not answer any of them, so not to cause any trouble, because there's no way he's going to come and get them. So Maya and Bailey Jr. listened, and they dealt with it for about 2 months. Randomly, one Saturday night, she overheard Vivian and her fiance in an argument. Vivian was begging for Maya and Bailey Jr. to go back home because she was being bothered by Big Bailey's constant calls. Her fiance didn't agree because he said Vivian promised him slaves for the next couple months since she spent all of his savings at the casino. After hearing this, Maya runs into the room and tells Bailey Jr. The next morning, they packed their bags up really, really early, took Vivian's credit card, and ran off to go back to New York. While they're walking towards the bus station, they decided to stop at the gas station to get a couple snacks. It was hot, they're tired, and they needed a drink. Bailey Jr. kept watch outside while Maya went inside to get what she wanted. As she was in there, a white man started spewing hate. She was confused about the whole situation because this never happened to her before, and it eventually escalated to the point where he ended up spitting on Maya. This then caused Bailey to enter and proceed to fight said guy. They both end up getting arrested, Bailey and the guy. And yeah, Maya had no choice but to call Vivian. Vivian enters the jailhouse and she is just not saying the right words, and she just really made Maya mad. Maya then proceeded to call her dad on a whim. Her dad answers and basically says he's been trying to get a hold of them for the past 2 months and hasn't gotten an answer back at all. He then says, I'll drive up over there, and to pass the phone over to Vivian. He eventually gets to the police station. Hours later, he bails out Bailey Jr. and gets into a huge argument with Vivian. They then start to head home. And that's basically the end of it. Maya is feeling kind of upset about the whole situation since she kind of really did want to get along with Vivian originally. At least somewhere in the back of her mind, she wanted to have some sort of relationship with her mother just for it to turn out like that. So, yeah.
Okay then, Bianca, I'm about to ask you a couple questions. So, what were some important or meaningful moments in the narrative that resonated with you personally? Why were these moments significant to you?
So a moment that was very important or was meaningful, at least to me, was towards the end where Maya kind of self-reflects. She is essentially like a headstrong character who kind of doesn't want to kind of show her emotional side and kind of doesn't want to show like how much her not getting along with her mother hurted her. And personally, I can relate. I feel like a lot of people can relate of them not wanting to show their emotional side and how very important puzzles of their lives can greatly disappoint them in a way. But being so headstrong about a situation that you don't really want to show it to the public.
Yes, Bianca. I can definitely relate to that too. Why? Next question. So, what message or theme did you want readers to take away from your narrative? How did you work to convey that message to your audience?
So the original message or the theme that I wanted to convey was not all adults make good decisions. I have it to where it can apply to both Big Bailey and Vivian. They both made terrible decisions throughout the story, especially Vivian and Big Bailey for even trusting Vivian enough to send your children there for months, because technically Vivian wanted them for the rest of the year. He was just so blinded by his own love for Vivian that he just did not make a smart decision there despite Maya's protest. I mean, I would have, at least if I was a parent, I would have read upon her, get to know her alone at least for a couple of days to make sure it's safe to send my children out over there. You haven't seen the woman in like 15 years. Like, what would make you think that's a good idea? You know what I mean? And I felt like I conveyed it pretty well. I mean, I feel like Big Bailey at least learned from just openly trusting a virtual stranger. And I kind of want my audience to kind of stand up for themselves. That's how I kind of wanted this to go through. If you feel like something's not right, even though a supposed trusted adult is making the decision, you know, put your foot down, get into like a actual conversation and try to get it worked out, because, you know, sometimes they're not always right, and that's just the God honest truth.
I know that's right, Bianca. All right, next question. So, how different from or similar to your original selected narrative text was your fan fiction narrative? Why did you make that choice?
So, my original fan my original selective narrative versus my fan fiction narrative are almost completely different. The only thing like that's somewhat similar is the characters, but even then it's kind of like a total switch in personalities, besides probably Bailey Jr. So what's completely different? Number one, I have it set to a complete different time period. Originally, when I was building the whole narrative, I wanted it to where I was trying to see if Maya can discover like some big thing about herself and how she flowed, but it didn't work out. So I really wanted it to be in a different time period. I wanted to see if my mind could create a virtual reality where Maya isn't like a depressed child. You know what I mean? Hate to say it, love the book, but you know, it was kind of depressing, okay? And I just wanted a space to be less depressed, even though, you know what, the little fan fiction was a bit, you know, it was a bit problematic in its own, you know, in its own little way. But, you know, the whole racism, all of that was mixed into the issues in I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings and the societal differences, etc. Some of those are essentially non-existent in my fan fiction because I wanted those societal changes, which is why, you know, I made that choice on making it in the 2000s. And yeah, and why I made like the full character switch up. Big Bailey and I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is, he's just a what's a good word for it? He's just not a good person, okay? And Vivian was kind of, I don't know, she didn't really get all that much hang time. Besides the whole entire part she played, I hate to say it, in Mr. Freeman entering Maya's life. She didn't really get portrayed. She got portrayed as someone that Maya and Bailey Jr. missed, but not like, you know, someone. So I just wanted to switch the roles a bit to see what could come out of it, and I like the result. I hate to say it.
Well, I just want to tell you, Bianca, we all like the result, man.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next question. So, how did you develop the characters in your narrative? Were they inspired by real people or entirely fictional?
Good question. So, the way I developed my characters, so I mean, they weren't entirely fictional. I originally pulled them from I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, from Maya Angelou's, you know, book. However, I loosely, very, very extremely loosely, like, attributed the same character traits, because technically they're real people for Maya. But since I made this in a brand new time period and switch roles between who's evil and bad and stuff like that, I guess you could call them a bit fictional. But yeah, I developed them in tune with how I would expect the situation to happen in the 2000s. Because 2000s, I mean, you know, they're still like, they weren't as woke as a society as we are now, versus there were like way more woke than what it was in the 1950s. So yeah.
That would answer, Bianca.
Thank you. All right.
No question. Were there any challenges or obstacles that you faced while writing this narrative, and how did you overcome them?
So the challenges that I faced were, I mean, they're subpar. I was essentially creating this from scratch. So I got into a roadblock after like my third paragraph, and I really had to figure out a way on how this would end. Despite me already writing out the outline of how I wanted the story, it was still getting jumbled in my head on how to execute it, like with my writing. But eventually I got the groove back. I went back to my outline and I paid attention some more, and I worked on my draft to figure it out. And that's how I overcame them.
Well, Bianca, thank you so much for this interview. You guys can find this short story on FOVS, try to get one of those teachers to go ahead and share it over to you guys. And go ahead and read it. I would suggest it. Yeah, Thomas out. Podcast over. Come on back this time next week. We have another special guest for you guys. You won't guess who.